In this video, we're building a miniature platform roof in wood based on a prototype from the 50s.
Hello and welcome to another video tutorial. Yeah, it's been a while. I've been ill, been in bed for like 2 weeks, but now I'm back in production. This video should have been, all released, mid-April, but we're almost mid-May now, and here we are. But hey, thank you to all the patrons who have been staying with me and supporting the channel, even though I've been unable to make videos. I love you so much. It's great. This video I'm going to spend building a platform roof. This type of platform roof is very common here in Scandinavia. It's Scandinavian style. It's made of wood, and they're still around in many places. And I've been around taking photos of them, making measurements also. I'm putting up a link, or actually I'm putting up all the templates and documents for you patrons. So it's on my Patreon side. You'll find the link in my in the video description below if you're interested in making one of these platform roofs. So let's get to it.
Alright, so here's the prototype of the platform roof in wood. This is from the 50s, I think, somewhere like that. The material we're using to build this platform roof is 1.5mm thick plywood. This is birch plywood. You'll find it in the section for aero modeling in your hobby shop. This is spruce 2x5mm dimension on that one. And I'm also using a 1.5mm thick balsa sheet as doublers in the pillars and in some other locations. So you need one of those as well. These roofs on my platforms will be 700mm long, so I'm marking the length first of the roof. I found that the easiest way to cut a 1.5mm thick plywood is to use a hobby knife like this. Just make a mark in the surface, turn it around and make a similar mark on the other side. Then it's just to bend slightly and you'll get it into the pieces you intended. Next thing is to cut the width. This roof will be V-shaped, so I'm clamping the plywood sheet to my table. This is because it's very easy that the knife follows the grain in the surface of the plywood and not the steel scale, especially when you're cutting such long segments that we're cutting here. So I'm also giving the hobby knife a bit of angle towards the steel scale, and then with a similar process it's just to cut on the front and the back side and break the pieces off. So here are the 4 roof segments. I didn't know if I told you, but I will build 2 of these roofs. Now we need to sand an angle to make a better fit between the 2 roof halves. For this I'm using a 6mm thick balsa sheet as a standoff. Each edge of the roof should be elevated 7.5mm. So I'm taping this standoff onto my table, and then I'm using the edge of the table because it's exactly 90 degrees. And with the standoff as a template, I sand it until I get that perfect fit between the 2 roof halves. Let's have a look at the prototype again. See, here are rafters with, I'm thinking of having about 20mm spacing in between these rafters. So coming back to the roof, I'm marking position of the 20mm spacing. The reason for not gluing them in place before dividing the sheet is the risk to damage them, because I make them from balsa, and balsa is kind of soft material. So now with the 70mm marked on my balsa sheet, I cut pieces out. I'm gonna use my balsa slicer to make these rafters. I have a link to a video showing how to build one of these. It's not very complicated, just a piece of plywood and a razor blade. And then it's very easy just to slice a large amount of rafters out. Now, in order to simplify the assembly of rafters to the roof sheeting, I have fixed the roof sheeting to an assembly board. All of the assembly work will be done using PVA glue, that's wood glue or Elmer Construction if you're in the US. And then I'll just put some glue onto each rafter and move a weight. So I have a weight which holds it in place until the glue has cured. And I glue alternately one the other roof and then I move the weight. Once the glue has dried, which takes about an hour, it looks like this. Now, first thing I'm going to do is to trim off some of that excess rafters outside the roof sheeting and then cut the two roof parts in half. Do this with a razor blade and just cut those and separate them. With that done, I just sand the same angle onto the rafters as I have done previously on the roof sheeting. And see, it looks good. Now, and here's a very good trick for gluing pieces together using Elmer's Construction or PVA glue, as in this case. Just take a piece of paper tape and then apply it onto the two pieces, stretch it gently so you get a stretch over, and then fold it together and apply the glue over the time. Then smoothen out the glue surface using your finger. The good thing with this type of assembly is that the paper tape will help you to keep these two parts together and actually press them together, which otherwise is very hard along such a long surface. Then excess glue can be removed using a small piece of scrap balsa or plywood, whatever you have available. Then let it dry. I put a weight. This is a steel pipe. And once dry, I just remove these tapes. Now, looking at this, you can see that there are imperfections in the edge or in the joint between the roof halves, as well as a bit of excess glue. So I'm sanding it smooth using a 400 grit paper. With that done, it's time to plaster it. The purpose with plastering is both to remove the surface grain of wood and to fix the joint. Alright, the plaster I'm using is a water-based plaster for indoor woodwork. And when it's ready, it looks like this. Leave it to dry now and then sand it again, smooth with a 400 grit paper. Coming back to the prototype again, we see that it's painted with white. It's a kind of creamy white paint. So we're gonna mix that. I use some titanium white. That one is a bit hard in the white tone, so I'm adding a tiny bit of yellow as well. That will give me, hopefully, if I got the proportions right, that creamy white look. If you take too much, then I will end up something looks like a lemon, and that's not what we want. No, this looks pretty good. So I'm painting this. It required 2 layers of this white paint to give a good look. The outside is painted using a spray can of matte black. While the roof is drying, I'm cutting the beams to 700 millimeter as well. I have in the past tried to detail these, but it didn't turn out well, so I'm going for a look without details, just smooth style. Now let's make those pillars. You see here it's a straight section. There's this horizontal beam and the arches. They're both arches, separate arches, and arches which are part of the pillar itself. So here I've drawn the pillars. The template for this pillar is available on my Patreon site, so if you want to have a look at that, check out the Patreon, and at the same time supporting the channel, which is absolutely necessary for the continuation of this channel. To cut this, I use a jigsaw with a blade, saw blade intended really for metal. So it's a saw blade with really fine small tooths. Now let's make those separate arches as well. I make them as well from 1.5 millimeter thick plywood. And I cut them out using the jigsaw as well. The platform roof I'm building will have 6 pillars each, so there's a total of 12 pillars to complete this. Next action now is to cut the horizontal twin beams which are carrying the weight of the roof. These are made from 2 by 2 millimeter thick spruce, and I cut them using a razor blade. Then it's time to glue the twin beams onto the pillar, and I do that using the same type PVA, Elmer construction. In German it's called Kanal. And then remove excess glue using a piece of scrap wood. I have a piece of plywood to do this. Alright, so once they're all completed, it's time to get started on the doublers, which would increase the thickness of the pillars and also support that horizontal twin beam. So I make these doublers from the 1.5 millimeter thick balsa sheet. Cut them to the same width as the pillar is wide, which is 9 millimeters. I glue them in place as well using a thin layer of PVA glue, wood glue. Like this. Great, make sure it's aligned. And when all are ready, I put some glue into that slot and slot them onto the top beam. Make sure that they're straight and in angle. Someone somewhere told me how to transform a standard peg in wood to a very useful clamp for this type of construction works. So just to turn them the opposite way around, and then you get a very good fixing clamp for this type of assemblies. Yeah. So now I'm fixing the outer beams to the pillars. And then when it's dry, it's just to spray it using a burnt umber brown paint. And then I try it onto the roof. Yeah, it looks good. And I think it's ready for assembly, so I'm adding glue on top of the beams, and then I assemble the beams to the roof. And again, fix with those reversed pegs. Now it's time for some illumination. On the prototype there are illumination in between every pillar. That makes a total of 5 LEDs. I use surface mount LEDs. Start by tinning the pads, the solder pads of the LEDs. For this type of soldering directly onto a component, I use 270 degrees Celsius. For the wires is just this. This is cable taken from a car. I removed the isolation, and this is just the copper strands. Once assembled, make sure it works before you before you glue it in place in the roof. Another thing I found just during this assembly was that I wanted to paint the copper wire black. Easiest way to do this was to put them all on a piece of paper tape as a mask and then spray the rest. Only piece that didn't get sprayed was the active part of the LED. So they are glued in place using fast set glue. And again, try it so it does work before moving to the next step. Now, I did connect all of these LEDs in series, so there are 5 of them, and each LED has a 3.2 voltage forward voltage, which makes a total of 15 volts. So I'm trying here with a 1 kilo ohm series resistor, and it does give a good light. Alright, one detail that I really liked in the prototype was these signs, which are held in place using some iron bars of some kind, which is screwed to the roof. So I'm doing a model of those as well. I found some posters which I printed out on my printer, inkjet printer, and I will glue them on top of this 0.4 millimeter thick plywood sheet. The fixture will be made from a 0.5 millimeter diameter blackened steel wire. So I'm putting some construction glue onto this plywood, smoothing it out, or spread it with a finger, and then I put these posters, HO scale posters, into the glue, as well as the station sign. Avoid using too much glue, because then the paper will kind of curl. The good thing with this thin plywood is that you can cut it using scissors. So I'm just cutting these signs out using the scissor, and then it's if you like, you can sand the edges to get a really square look. So I'm gluing these together using same type of construction glue. The station name didn't require any fitting, it was just glued, or here applied there, so very easy. More complicated is this arrangement with the steel bars. I bend it, and then I glue the signs in place using fast set glue. The trick here is not to get stuck with your fingers whilst the poster is not sticking. It's definitely something to think about. And then it's just to bend these ends so it forms. They're formed like the roof. Then I just put a drop of fast set glue, which will hold them in place. Remove excess glue using a cotton swab or cotton pin. So, looks nice. Now there's just one more thing to do, and that is to weather the outside of the roof slightly. For this I use pastel chalk powder. So I just have a pastel chalk, and I use a scalpel to grind off some powder from it. Then it's just to assemble the roof to the platform. I let one pillar cover the hole for the cable entirely. Then put this luggage trolley from Architect in place, together with some passengers. Yeah. What is a platform without passengers?
Alright, I hope you liked the video. If you did, please help others to find this video by giving it a thumbs up. If you have any questions at all about the methods or materials presented in the video, please post a comment in the comment field below this video and I'll try to respond to that as soon as possible. If this video helps you with your hobby, please remember that all of this is made possible because a few of you viewers are supporting the channel. This is a kind of niche interest which doesn't gain enough views to finance the channel only from YouTube income. So it's really dependent on Patreon support. So please, if you like the channel, be one of the supporters, get onto Patreon, set up a support account there, or make a one-off donation via the PayPal dialog found in the video description below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and enable the little bell and you will get a notification once next video gets published. Until that happens, see ya!